Okay, well, thank you for joining everyone this webinar on nature systems approach to kind of nature recovery and climate action. My name is Ben Gill. I'm the head of customer success at One Planet. I'm going to be coordinating the session. I'm going to be supported by Viviana. Maybe you can pop your camera on, Viviana, and wave, and Puran and Chris Fairbrother from the South Downs will be leading on the presentation. Maybe all the presenters could turn on their cameras if they're not on. We can see them. Great. So Puran will start with framing the challenge of addressing connected complex problems, and then Chris will dive into the case study of the South Downs. We want to leave at least half an hour for discussion, so they won't be presenting for too long. The aim is to finish at 3 o'clock, but we will be staying on. We put in for an hour and 15 minutes. So if anyone wants to stay on and ask more questions, we will be here. I think everyone is muted. If you can stay muted unless when we get to the discussion you're asking a question, that would be great. Feel free to turn on your cameras if you are able to. Just to explain at the beginning, for those of you who are new to One Planet and would like to learn more afterwards, we do have free training, a more deeper training called Systems Connector. We do workshops for teams, and then we do pilot projects, which we'll go through all of those at the end in a little more detail. But I will now hand over to Puran to give some more context on how we address complex problems and why we need to address complex problems with a systems approach.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you everyone for joining today. So my name's Puran Desai. I'm founder of One Planet. So as a society, we're tearing our hair out trying to deal with issues in silos. So we try and deal with the cost of living crisis in a way that makes the climate emergency worse. Now, 100% it's not going to work. We're not going to solve our problems in that way. Instead of that, can we get out of the weeds, look at the bigger picture, think about what are the outcomes we want to achieve, and then can we identify a set of more or less joined up, what we call shared outcomes, and then collaborate on those shared outcomes across traditional silos of different sectors, public sector, private sector, voluntary sector, silos of different organizations, silos of different departments within the same organization. Next slide, please, Ben. And why won't working on issues in silos work? And it's really fundamental. It's because those silos do not exist in reality. So it's not as though health exists in one place, climate in another, jobs in a third place. Reality is massively interconnected. And so sustainability, or creating a regenerative future, whatever you want to call it, creating a better future, is all about understanding that everything is interconnected and that trying to tackle issues in silos simply won't work. So, for example, what we build determines how much we use our cars. If those cars are internal combustion engine cars, they're creating pollutants damaging our health, contributing to climate change, supporting the oil industry, which also creates single-use plastics, which end up in the oceans, filling our fish up with plastics. If we choose to eat those fish, we fill ourselves up with even more microplastics. So now every cell in our body has microplastics in it, and evidence coming through that if you've got high levels of microplastics in the walls of your blood vessels, you're 4 times as likely to get a stroke. But those plastics are also killing penguins on the other side of the world. So things are massively interconnected, but we don't have the tools to visualize or manage for those connections, nurture the good connections, and prevent the bad connections happening. So next slide. So that's why we've built One Planet. But One Planet hasn't come from an academic systems thinking approach. It's really come from practical experience, about 35 years of sustainability experience in forestry, farming, recycling, real estate development around the world, working on the Olympics and actually creating a framework called One Planet Living, which on which the UN Sustainable Development Goals are based. So it's come from a very practical need to help people see interconnectedness. Next slide, please. And it's a really, at its core, a very, very simple technology. We use very different database technology to the ones most organizations use. We use what are technically known as graph databases, or we might call them network databases, where all the data is held on the basis of its interconnectedness, which you can't track through things like Excel spreadsheets. And we have a very simple logical framework or methodology that we apply to that for any plan, policy, project, strategy. We break it down into its components of outcomes, what you want to achieve, which are circles in our system, actions, how you will achieve those outcomes, which are hexagons, and indicators, what you'll use to measure progress. And some of those indicators may have targets associated with them. And we create these mind maps, which then are totally interconnectable. So we sometimes call it a meeting of minds. So we can connect in ecosystems across organizations, across plans, across departments, across sectors in any way that we find useful. So next slide, please. And in fact, my background's in neuroscience and medical sciences, although I've worked in sustainability all my life. It's brought me full circle to my neuroscience days, and it turns out the latest in neuroscience is telling us very clearly that there's a fundamental reason why our brain is divided into two halves, and this is a little different from what left and right brain was thought to be in the 1970s, 80s, but nonetheless there's a fundamental difference between the two. So the left half of the brain sees the world as separate parts, but literally cannot put those parts together. So it might know what a head is, what an arm is, what a leg is, but it can't put those parts together. If you ask that half of the brain to put those parts together, it might stick the leg on top of the head. It doesn't know it's got it wrong. Worse than that, it can't be persuaded it's got it wrong. So the right half of the brain can see the bigger picture, understands context, understands how things fit together, understands nuance, is much more collaborative because it can see other people's points of view. And actually, if you ask it any question, it answers it more intelligently. So although the left brain can do some things like process some forms of information more quickly, it doesn't really understand what it's doing or why it's doing that. And in a world dominated by Excel spreadsheets, we can see why, in fact, we're not responding very intelligently to the problems that we face. And next slide. So, you know, we've just, as you all know, broken records, May records for temperatures. So climate change now is unfolding very, very rapidly. We're seeing all sorts of issues, of course, when that's happening in farming, water, health, not just in this country, but around the world. And so we believe that now the way we're going to solve problems is not by tackling issues, but by collaborating in systems. And to do that, as well as our platform, we've been training what we call certified systems connectors, who can connect where necessary and start finding those collaborative solutions that we need going forward. So linking across health, climate, jobs, pollution, all of that to get the joined up solutions we need. And hopefully also in that process start pulling the country together when we seem to be pulling apart. And we're just so excited, thanks to Chris and his team at the South Downs National Park Authority that we're just starting a project. So we've been working with South Downs for about 4 years now, and Chris will share some of that. But we're also starting a project to look at how can we use One Planet at a national level for for nature recovery and climate adaptation resilience at the national level, and link that across to issues like health and jobs. So I think that's it from my side. So yeah, be delighted to talk to you about any of these issues. So do reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, or email me puran.desai@oneplanet.com. I'll hand back to you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Puran. So before handing over to Chris, we asked all of you sort of what you saw as the key challenges in managing complex systems and partnerships. And thanks to those of you who replied. It seems that the questions we asked were quite accurate. We had 2 people with other, which was really around decision making, how you make better decisions. But then the 2 sort of top ones that came up from the suggestions we had were about delivering work through partners and making the connection in the bigger picture, understanding the interconnections between different issues. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now, and he will hopefully cover many of those issues, but with a focus on delivering through partnership and connecting up different issues.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. My name's Chris Fairbrother. I'm the strategy lead at the South Downs National Park Authority. I'm based within their nature and climate team, and I lead on their climate change program, which includes sort of adaptation, resilience, community-based work. I also do a bit of time as policy and best practice lead for National Parks England on climate resilience. So that's kind of my background. Next slide, please, Ben. Just as a bit of context about the South Downs, in case you don't know it, it's a landscape that stretches about 110 linear miles end to end from Winchester through to Eastbourne, covers around 1,630 square kilometres of quite varied landscapes, really. So you've got the iconic chalk hills, sandstone ridges, wooded wealds and heaths, and the heritage coast of Seven Sisters Country Park over in the east. It's situated within a busy and pressured region, both economically and in terms of planning. And within our patch, we work with 15 local authorities. And obviously, we are also impacted by current changes around local government review and devolution. So we're working through that with our partners now. So I'm fine on that slide, Ben, thank you. As a National Park Authority, we're a management body that deals with a complex set of partners and organisations. And as Puran said, we originally came across One Planet probably about 4 years ago when they came along to demo the platform to the Climate Change and Energy Group. And I was immediately struck by the potential to help us sort of tackle some of these systemic challenges and break out of silos. Next slide, please. What struck me about it really was that ability to help visualize, better understand connections between environmental and social and economic challenges. Our core focus, our statutory duties around nature recovery, climate and cultural heritage. And as a strategy lead, my main challenge is really developing effective policy and delivery against all these interrelated issues and complexity. It's difficult to see the connections between these issues and to focus on interventions and actions that are truly effective. And we saw potential in the platform to achieve this. And we were able to benefit from funding from Innovate UK as part of the Future Ready programme during 2024 and 25. And we used this to work very closely with One Planet to develop new functionality within the platform. And we've started to move from where it was a tool to help us to map and understand shared priorities and actions across the park to one that helps us to better collaborate and deliver on them. And the Pathfinder project, which we ran for about 18 months, was a collaboration between us, as I said, and One Planet as a technical platform provider. And the aim was really to accelerate progress on climate action across a large and complex geographical area, use one platform to join up actions across public, private and community sectors, And we're also aiming to sort of understand more about the delivery of co-benefits around nature restoration, health and social equity. Next slide, please, Ben. One of the main benefits from the Innovate UK funded project was really the ability to start to map and understand what was being delivered in terms of nature recovery and climate action across the patch and by whom. The initial phase of the project was really about mapping the plans and strategies for our key partners and the community groups within the park. And we ended up, through the course of the project, mapping around 106 separate climate and nature-related plans and strategies at a very strategic level, all the way down to community-based and parish plans. And though this forms a very complex web of outcomes and actions, the platform really enables you to view and understand the connections between them. And it was able to highlight both the opportunities for shared delivery and, equally importantly, where the gaps were in that delivery. So importantly, I think, initially before this project, we had very little understanding about the collective scale and importance of community-based action within the national park. And I think we'd have not been able to have delivered quite an effective approach to support and grow that without using the One Planet platform, because it did enable us to bridge that gap between national priorities and targets, park-wide, and all the way down to community-based action. So it really offered us the potential to learn how we could make, to sort of develop our plans, improve them, make them better, and start to develop a bit of a solutions library that we could share, so others could plan effectively too. Next slide, please, Ben. We've recently had the chance to start using the sort of resources we developed through the project in relation to our plan making. So this is looking ahead to the next 5 years. We recently developed and launched our new statutory partnership management plan, which is a plan for the national park as an area. So it's very much a partnership-driven plan. So it needs to be effective in how it connects us up with that wider partnership, how it supports delivery on shared challenges, particularly around nature recovery, climate change, and community resilience. So in developing that plan, we spoke with our partners, farmers and landowners, residents, local communities to identify a clear set of shared outcomes and priorities. And we used One Planet to map and understand the connections between these priorities and where we could all work best together. The plan itself is sort of badged as Together Now for Nature, Climate and People. And it's, as I said, it sets out our key priorities and actions that will be our focus for the next 5 years. Next slide, please, Ben. I'll focus on 2 of the main areas, really. The first one being nature and climate. The immediate priorities for our action plan around this have been, obviously around nature recovery, about supporting climate action, and interestingly, an area we're moving into now is support for catch-and-based partnerships and working towards clean water for nature and people. So that's a new outcome and part of the programme for us. Next slide, please, Ben. Under people and places, the focus is really about creating opportunities for young people, supporting recreational and access to the countryside, protecting cultural heritage and supporting thriving communities and rural businesses. Next slide, please, Ben. So now that we have the firm foundation of the partnership management plan, it's given us a really good starting point to start to consider delivery elements of it for each aim and objective. So we started to use the platform to develop thematic action plans that sit under the management plan and that really support and drill down into delivery. So that, and Poran mentioned about the basic building blocks of an ecosystem plan. So it means that each action plan is consistent in terms of its focus on outcomes, actions, and indicators. And we also understand where these outcomes are shared between plans and organisations, so we can avoid duplication in tracking and monitoring. We've previously struggled with that and to make such a clear link between our priorities and delivery on the ground. But I think the One Planet platform is making that much more evident for us. And we're able to demonstrate the impact that's being achieved, both from our own delivery and what's being achieved from partners in support of our priorities. It's also starting to highlight where the opportunities are for us to work with partners to scope and initiate new projects. So I think it's a really good way to support external funding bids. And we're using it really to develop that project pipeline, promoting and supporting genuine collaboration and focusing resources where they can have the greatest impact. And I think in a sector where there are increasing constraints about funding and resources, the ability to go for projects in that sweet spot with clear co-benefits is increasingly important. Next slide, please, Ben. And overall, the flexibility of the One Planet platform in terms of the functionality it has itself and its ability to integrate with other platforms has been its main strength. It has presented us with a unique ability to view and connect data, both at individual plan level and strategies, but across that whole ecosystem as well. And with the Innovate UK funding, we definitely benefited from the opportunity of working directly with One Planet to develop some of this new functionality. And on the slide here, we've included a new geomap function so we can start to map and show where projects are delivering, a live feed for news and sharing project updates, as well as case study examples. And one of the potential areas we're now exploring relates to a feature that allows us to develop and share a solutions library with our partners and community groups. So this will feature actions, projects, or interventions that have proven impact for nature and climate. And in the longer term, we see this as a way of being able to very effectively share knowledge and best practice with anyone who's developing their own action plan. And we're starting to develop a workspace on the platform to directly support connect action between community groups and across the national park as a way of growing and nurturing best practice and scaling out at park-wide level. And this is definitely the next stage for us. So I think it makes the platform a really powerful tool for collaboration between organisations and at that local, bioregional and national level. I think also it's obviously difficult in the context of a short session to demonstrate everything a platform can do. But I would say if you're facing the sort of challenges that I've outlined there in terms of complex partnerships and trying to connect the dots around delivery, I would really encourage you to take a look at the resources on the webpage and have a think. I think now, we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answer sessions. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to take them. I'd also, after the workshop session, I'm also happy to do any follow-up, and I'll put my contact details in the chat.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris, for that, rapid review. While I try and, there we go. So I was just going to give, before we go into the discussion, so if people start thinking of their questions, please add them into the chat as we go, just to give a little bit of a picture of the platform live, so it doesn't just look like some slides. But this just shows within the South Downs ecosystem, within their workspace, here are some of the plans that they are coordinating to deliver on nature recovery and climate outcomes. If we look at one of these plans, so the Hampshire Wildlife Trust, we can see on this all of the outcomes that the Hampshire Wildlife Trust are aiming for and the actions that they're taking. In this case, we're looking at it through the lens of the partnership management plan. So Chris mentioned that there's 7 kind of categories. So this is looking at it using those categories, but we can also look at it in any lens we want. So we've also put it into the One Planet Living framework, and then you can see how that activity may be how their plan is addressing a more holistic sustainability framework. We can also work in a table view. So these are all of the list of the actions. Much more if you've got a list of actions that you need to update, you can go through and update all of the information there. And all of that information also goes into a report. So if you're needing to generate a report, you could generate that report for Chris in the partnership management plan framework. But if you were reporting to someone else and wanted to use a different framework, you can actually then just change the structure of your report immediately and put it into a different framework. So it enables you to report to multiple audiences. And then just to pick up on the kind of critical collaboration feature. So we go back to the partnership management plan lens. The outcomes with a circle around them. These are the shared outcomes from the partnership management plan that connect together all of the plans that Chris is sort of looking to corral in the right direction. And if you dive into one of those plans, so this is landowners delivering nature recovery and climate action, we can sort of dive into that outcome in more detail and see, okay, these are the 5 plans that we're focusing on that all make a direct contribution to that. We can start looking at, okay, how is Hampshire County Council's LNRS overlapping with the Wildlife Trust? What work are they doing that is overlapping? Can we enable them to collaborate? So that just gives a little sense of how the platform can help enable that collaboration. So I think, yeah, it would be great to hand over to some questions now. I'll stop sharing my screen for that so I can look at all of the questions. We can pick up a few of them. I mean, maybe we can take them in order. On the catchment partnerships, we're not working directly with any catchment partnerships. Chris, I don't know if you have thoughts on whether the platform would work at that scale, or how
yeah, I think
effective.
My sense would be it would work very well at that scale, because it's just a sort of area-based complex partnership where there's shared outcomes and objectives across organisations. We have looked at mapping 1 or 2 catchment level plans, and as I mentioned, with our statutory partnership plan, we've got a whole new programme of work that's focusing on water for nature and people. So we think that engagement with the catchment level partnership is going to be an important one for us, and the water industry as well. So we think this could be a really good driver for that.
Maybe I could kind of pick on you for the next question around farmer engagement and how that's kind of progressing, or maybe a bit more, maybe not just farmers, but other sort of key landowners, stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, we generally we've got sort of direct working relationships with the landowning farming community. We operate the Farming in the Protected Landscapes programme, which is a grant programme supporting sort of environmental, nature and climate actions at farm level. We also work very closely with the farmer-led farm clusters across the patch. And obviously we've worked with them quite closely to develop some of the policies that we've got within the partnership management plan. As yet, we've not deployed One Planet in support of that work, other than obviously mapping the policies and delivery. I know obviously you've had some conversations with the farming and wildlife advisory groups, particularly. Again, another example of an area-based, highly complex partnership that I think this kind of platform could really support.
Brilliant, thanks. And there was a question related to that on how the platform interacts with local nature recovery strategies. I mean, it's Puran mentioned at the beginning, we're looking at how One Planet can be digital infrastructure for nature recovery. We will start putting the local nature recovery strategies into One Planet, so that people within those regions can look at how they're contributing to that. So I think it can definitely be a platform that can help in the delivery of the nature recovery strategies, and also the ongoing reporting. I mean, it does seem that all the county councils will benefit from a clear set of reporting guidelines and a single platform that everyone can report in the same way on what they were doing. So yeah, that's an example of how One Planet could help in people exchanging and sharing knowledge on that.
Yeah, if I could just come in there, Ben. I mean, obviously we did have a little bit of a go at mapping some of the LNRSs that we're developing in our patch in the early stages. And I think for me, again, it just underpins that the the ability of the platform to be able to map what's going on. But I think for me, the opportunity would be around the next iteration of the plans and monitoring and tracking them. Because I think, as you said, there doesn't seem to be much of a process or structure in place to do that, and to be reporting back to DEFRA particularly around it. So I think there's a real opportunity there.
Thanks, Chris. If there are any more questions on LNRS or that type of area, please, stick them in the chat and we'll pick on Chris for that. I think it's also worth noting just on the partnership work. I won't pick on her to speak, but we do have someone from Horsham on the call, and Chris and the South Downs team are working very closely with Horsham District Council on the platform to enable collaboration with that sort of from South Downs through the district down into the community groups, and enable all of that work to be aligned so that it can deliver broader outcomes and wider benefits. Kat, had a practical question on kind of getting information into One Planet. So we take a plan and we put it into that format of outcomes, actions, indicators. Work we've done with local governments, doing that with their internal strategies, they've often found kind of quite amazing that every single strategy they've got is in a different format. It uses different language. You can't actually align it. So just the simple process of being able to see them in the same language is helpful. So yes, we take a plan and we in effect translate it into the One Planet logical framework, the One Planet syntax, whatever we want to call it. Currently, that's a semi-automated process. We are just starting, and we'll have relatively soon a fully automated process that we can put a plan into One Planet, and it will essentially automatically create a mind map for you. And just linking to that, the live updates. So when people create stories or information, that can be directly published on One Planet, but it can also be published into social media. The mind map can be embedded in other people's websites. So actually, the South Downs have their mind map on their website, or and other organisations do. So that can be used as a form of communication. All right.
Yeah, just on the point about uploading the information, some of our partners, customers do it themselves. So they do it manually, and there's a real value in that, actually just understanding what's in those plans, seeing how it fits together. So I wouldn't underestimate the value of doing some of this manually, and some people actually have just do it without any training at all. So it is very simple in the basics of uploading outcomes, actions, indicators, and linking them. And actually, if you go to our website, you can create a free account, but you don't even need to create a free account. We've got a little play space there. You can have a go at creating an outcome, action, indicator and linking it, allocating it to a lens category, as we call it. And if you've got that, that's 90% of understanding of the platform and how it works. Of course, there's a little more to it to use it well, as with any other tool, but it's really pretty simple on that. And in terms of engaging the public as well, we're now starting to move to over the course of the next few months, we'll also have a mobile friendly version. You can do everything on a mobile phone, but we'll also look at something much simpler to engage citizens in. So simplifying that information and making it much easier for communities to engage. It's really an organizational platform at the moment for local authorities, regional authorities, community or local infrastructure organisations, as they're called, I think, organisations which support community groups to use, although some community groups use it as well. It's we're we're finding ways of making it simpler and easier for them to engage.
Thanks, Paran. There were a few questions relating to sort of how community groups input information, and who manages the One Planet tool. Sort of look at those together. So, yeah, I mean, Paran just mentioned anyone can create a free account. So, Chris, where he's working directly with an organization, they have a kind of plan within his workspace, and they're then able to collaborate on that working together. But anyone who has an account on One Planet can ask to join Chris's ecosystem plan, can adopt shared outcomes, and input information, so link an action to that and say what they're doing, and Chris is then able to see that information and make the connections with other people who are working in that same area. So yeah, anyone can use it for free and input information in that way.
If I might, Ben, on that one, could I
Yeah.
come in on that? Because I think it's an important element of it, because we are so focused on community-based work. One of the real attractions for us is that ability for them to interact with our plan on the system for free and start to develop their own sort of action plans within that space. And I mentioned in my slides about this is going to be a focus for us. We're starting to develop that community workspace and sort of join up across the climate action networks, parish groups, and other environmental groups that we know that are out there, and start to effectively support and join them up as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, Chris is managing that. So you know, who manages the One Planet tool? I mean, the South Towns team are managing that, but the partners themselves are sort of controlling and managing their own input. Brian, do you have any? I'm just reading the next question.
Yeah, on that, you know, as much can be kept private as needs to be kept private, as much can be made public as you want to make public. So everyone can control their own plan, whoever's the owner of that plan, but can share as much or as little as they like. They can also publish it, as we call it, on our website. So you can publish, so show what you're doing. And it's a completely live feed. So as you're updating your plans, that can be made available to the public if you want that to happen. And then if people can see what you're doing, you can then request to collaborate. So if you go to the oneplanet.com website, you can go through to explore and look there on our published library, as we call it. These are all the people who have live feeds into the One Planet website. You can take snapshots of that as reports, PDF reports, and publish those as well. So you can have a 2023 report, 2024 report with a snapshot of where it was at those points, and then you can have your 2025 or 26 activity live. And as Ben said, you can embed those mind maps into your own website as you if you want as well. So we are linking. We're really working on linking systems mapping with collaboration. So there are systems mapping tools, but they're not necessarily easy to. It's not necessarily easy to collaborate on those. And there are collaboration platforms which aren't necessarily good at systems mapping. So linking the two together. And one of the things we're finding is creating, as Ben said, creating this common framework of outcomes, actions, indicators. We've been using it. Well, we started building One Planet about 8 years ago, and we haven't found a plan, strategy, or project which can't work in that structure. So the benefit of anyone being able to link and talk and collaborate with anyone else is, we think, potentially can really improve efficiency and ease of working between departments, between organisations, between different sectors as well.
Thanks, Brian. There's two questions from Melanie and Rosemary, which I'll consider respond to together. I suppose a question to all of the participants is we feel there is a need for some digital infrastructure to connect up all of the nature recovery, climate work that's happening across the country. I mean, the Well Adapted UK report that came out a few days ago, it highlighted how nature-based solutions are going to be critical in the urban environment, in transport, in managing water, waste. I mean, they just came up in all of these, for addressing all of these issues. And so we think a digital infrastructure for coordinating that work is required. And do participants see the potential for extending what we're doing to be that type of digital infrastructure? So it'd be very interested to just get your thoughts on that.
Can I pick up a bit on Rosemary's question about the work she's been doing on supporting community groups? I just wanted to say, I don't think, One Planet wouldn't necessarily supersede the work you're doing. I think my experience of it is our internal systems and processes. Sometimes we've got things that we're quite happy with that work for us, and we don't really want to change too much. And it's been more of a question of how we integrate with One Planet to make sure the data is coming into one central hub rather than replacing what we've already got. So my sense would be it wouldn't necessarily supersede what you're doing. In fact, it could be a complement to that, or you could build out or develop functionality of what you're doing using One Planet. So I think I don't think it'd be a case of superseding what you're doing. I imagine it would be a good supplement to that.
Yeah, I mean as mentioned, that the mind map, the geographic map, that can all be embedded within the website, which maybe play a greater role in communication and engagement with those community groups. I think it does. What it can help is addressing the point that Melanie has raised, that we've got lots of people doing things, but no one else knows what they're doing. So where we've been working with kind of climate teams in local government, they publish their climate action plan, and working with community groups who are putting the activity that they're doing on that, so that then the local government wants to know and kind of champion the work that the community groups are doing. But actually, by knowing what they're doing, they would know that there is some planting going on in one area, and that a different approach to managing that needs to be made. And at the moment, there isn't a means to enable that communication. So I think there's definitely an opportunity to help resolve those issues.
I think on that question, though, around how do you facilitate and support local communities to get involved, particularly around tree planting. Some of the climate action networks, particularly Petersfield Climate Action Network we've been working with, have been actively out there identifying land where that kind of planting can happen, and with landowners' permission, and actually have got quite a lot of trees in the ground through that avenue. So I think it's how do you support those local conversations with your local authority, but with private landowners as well, to sort of basically get more trees in the ground. It is possible, but I don't think you'd have to necessarily resort to guerrilla planting now. I think that in most situations there are opportunities to identify land for new planting.
I think just adding to that, I think one of the things I'm really keen on, because I come from a health background, is linking this across to health. So looking where nature recovery can actually promote human health, and very approximately every £1 we spend on community groups can save the NHS about £10. So that's becoming very clear that there's a massive opportunity to save the NHS lots of money, and not least through reconnecting people with the rest of nature, and looking at activities which get them out there, including things like tree planting. Then looking at the co-benefits of tree planting to things like flood prevention, to things like improving air quality. So we are, really hoping that this makes it easy to surface all the co-benefits, and look even at using this for social prescribing. So we're having some conversations around using it in social prescribing. Also, can we grant distribution be supported and be made more joined up using the information in this platform? Can we connect health funding networks with nature funding networks and look at combining those two to get double the benefit? So I think this whole idea of joining the dots is a very rich one. It's going to take us time, of course, to develop all the functionality for that, but we're very excited by that. And also its use in planning. So one of the things we're exploring with the South Downs National Park over the next few months is looking at to what extent One Planet can support planning processes. How do we link, the very difficult issues, or how do we resolve very difficult issues across water, health, jobs, flood resilience, development? So can we start looking at starting to join those dots as well from a foundation of nature recovery and climate resilience?
I just spotted there was another element to one of Ruth's questions in the chat, which I'm hoping she's still here for, which she says, are there limitations to the applicability of the platform at different scales? I think my general experience is no. You can work at a very, very, very local level. So everything from local composting schemes all the way. I mean, the reason we got the Innovate UK funding was really to test that notion that it could be applied at a wider, more complex geographical scale, i.e. national park wide, so 110 miles, 1,630 square kilometers. But equally, you could apply that at bioregional, and as Paran indicated, we're starting to get interest about if we think about, we're just one national park, there's 15 other national parks in the UK, there's loads of other national landscapes. We're all working very hard on nature recovery and climate change. How do we start to deliver at scale and pace collectively? And would the platform support us to do that more effectively? So we're really looking at that issue of applying at different scales. But I think Paran, you've said before, the higher up, at the very local level, things are quite complex, and the higher up you go, actually things start to get simpler, which is quite reassuring, really. But yeah, we're starting to look at how we might apply this at national level.
I think the other thing I might add on that is just using the mind maps to communicate can be very powerful. Of course, you can get a document readout all the time. You work in a document, though you are using the left half of your brain because it's very linear, and it becomes difficult to communicate the interconnectedness of things. So presenting information in mind maps, I think, enables people to, or it does enable people to start seeing the bigger picture. And I think that can, and we'll see how this, in practice, we're getting some anecdotal evidence of this, and I'm sure it's playing out, is that people can explore these mind maps themselves. So you're not forcing them to follow your particular way of understanding a system. They can go to the mind map, they can follow all the interconnections in whichever order they want. So that's a sort of explore type of activity, which is a right brain activity. And that, I think, that enables people to start seeing, okay, I'm concerned about health, but why might I also then need to be concerned about climate? Why might then, I also see the opportunity to generate jobs in renewable energy or in more sustainable forms of farming, so that people can understand that interconnectedness of things. So I think some of the softer aspects, if you like, the less management side of things, and the more understanding side of things we think can be unlocked by this process. But over the next year, I think it's going to be very exciting to see how this starts scaling and being used, and hopefully, as I say, start pulling people together. When we look at issues in silos, we tend to just champion our own issues, climate against cost of living, whatever. But when we start seeing the interconnections of those, does that help bring communities together? And we think it can, and we're doing more work with initiatives like the National Emergency Briefing, which is looking at how do we rapidly adapt to climate in a way which is good for health, good for the local economy. So starting to map that into One Planet as well.
Thanks, Veronica. A couple more quite specific question, Melanie. I'm sure I'll ask Chris to respond to that. Maybe offline. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on the. Chris has already done that. Has any thoughts on the kind of national digital infrastructure question? I know we have a few people from other national parks here. Does it make sense to start connecting up the work of, or the structure as a starting point of all of the national parks and their partnership management plans, applying a commonality there and looking at how that can then evolve. So is there any thoughts on that, or maybe that's a discussion we can have afterwards?
Well, I was thinking, I mentioned obviously about us starting to use it in terms of plan making, so the sort of action plan element, which we didn't have a great deal of time to go through, but what it does facilitate, and picking up on Farhan's point there about the ability to use the mind map function, is quite freeing, because you can start with community groups with a blank sheet of paper and build a plan out in a way that is remarkably different to writing what I would term a conventional management plan. And I think that's both incredibly freeing and incredibly powerful, because you can really co-develop stuff. And I hesitate to say how long I've been working in the sector, but for me, this does offer potential for genuine co-development of plans with community groups, parishes, sector partners. So yeah, I do think it's a fundamentally different way of working.
Brilliant. And yeah, that's the goal of the platform, Chris, as you know, is we know that complex problems can only be addressed collaboratively and taking a systems approach, and that's what we want to enable to happen. We will respond to any further questions. As I said, we're happy to remain on the call for at least another 15 minutes if people have further questions, but knowing that probably quite a few of you have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. Just wanted to outline how people can learn more. So you can explore the platform. I mean, Paran mentioned there's a sort of sandbox on the website itself, but we also have a beginner-friendly training that you can sign up for. That's a free training. We then have a systems connector training, which is 2.5-hour sessions that really goes into not just how you create a plan, but how you connect plans together, how you connect workspaces together, how you start collaborating around those shared outcomes. And we're starting to build a network of systems connectors who are also co-learning how you can use One Planet as a tool for implementing systems approaches. We can run workshops with organizations where we follow the training, but really tailor it to what the organization is doing and their specific goals. So we go through the training so people know how to use the platform and can own it, operate it afterwards, but in a workshop environment. And then finally, we do pilot projects to get people started using the platform, where we will take all the plans that you need to have them in your workspace, get them uploaded, create your ecosystem plan, connect them together, and train the relevant people in your team to use the platform. So yeah, if any of those are of interest, please get in touch. We will send obviously information on the next free training and systems connector training in a follow-up afterwards. But that's it from us. We've I think covered all of the topic and have plenty of time for questions. Chris, I don't know if you have any anything you would like to add at the end.
No, just to say, I will also, obviously, I'm happy for my contact details to go out as well if anyone wants to follow up with me. I've just spotted a really fascinating question from Patrick. I don't know if he's still on the call about, could the platform be used to help map energy flows and materials in a pollution basically bioregional level? I think, yes, I think it could. We've not used it in that way yet. I think the only thing it wouldn't do is necessarily track, some of the volumes or the metrics behind it. Yet you'd have to kind of do an extra piece of work to do that. But I think it could potentially do that.
Thank you, Chris. So yes, please, if you don't have any questions, you've got another meeting to go to, please drop off. But as I say, we will remain here and pick up any questions, additional questions that people might have. Anyone with questions? If not,
I think people can put their hands up as well. If it's a bit easier now.
Literally, I'm happy just to take questions now. If there's a small group, let's just have a conversation.
Patrick, I don't know if you have any more sort of detail on your question. Or Dan or Rebecca, Melanie.
Patrick, just on your point.
I'm here. Yeah. And thanks very much for answering my question. I mean, essentially it's coming from a place of very high level kind of systems approach that Indy Johar at Dark Matter Labs suggested. I mean, he came to visit Plymouth and presented something. He's produced a report, I don't know whether you've seen that, about South Devon Design Lab, and it makes very interesting reading, quite a challenging report. And yeah, I mean, a way to connect people, systems, processes, etc., across a bioregion would be to look at flows, as in a flowscape, not just a landscape. And he was recommending that as a thought experiment, really. And I just think potentially you could adapt your platform to align with that thinking.
I think, Patrick, we might during the course of the time we've worked with One Planet, and from the outset, whenever we thought, actually, can it do this? We've kind of just got on and done it. And I think that would be my best advice, is I think the platform could support you to do that. And the best thing to do is just jump in and have a go. And then find out what it can't do for you. And then our general approach was then talk to Ben and Paran and the team and say, would it be possible to? Is there an extra bit of functionality and it's worth having that conversation? Because I think that my sense is it would do that. I would at least get you to the point where you get the basics out of your brain and down on paper. Because if it's anything like me, the minute I saw those the mind maps, I just thought, this is great. This is just how my brain works. I can actually work with this now.
I'm the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd have a go and see where it gets you. Can you get the main areas down? Can you get the flows and the links? Can you work out how it interrelates? What sort of lenses do you want to view it through? What would be useful? How would you want to actually be able to portray and communicate that information once you've got it down? What's useful to break it down into subsets? Is it around pollution? Is it around particular sectors. So just having a think about how that might, then give you more value about what you've effectively mapped. You have to think about the custom lenses, have to think about how you might be able to view and manipulate that information.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. That's really, really, really clear.
Becky, hello.
You had your hand up very
Thank
patiently.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
I've spoken to Chris. I know that Chris, and I've spoken to him before about this tool and how interesting it is. So I work for the Planning Advisory Service. I guess I'm joining. The reason I sort of waited until now to come in is because I guess in terms of my work, it doesn't directly link in, but I can obviously see it's really, really useful in terms of my experience and what I've worked on. And I guess I just wanted to flag that. I mean, you're probably already aware of this, but I can see a really good link up with spatial development strategies and working with combined authorities and counties. And I don't know. So it's nothing that I can sort of help you with on that side, but I just wanted to really flag because I think that's in terms of the sort of, there is going to be some stuff at that level that they'll just have to do in partnership and collaboration in terms of spatial planning at that
One of the
level.
things that kind of caught us out a little bit with the Innovate UK project was obviously partway through we had the announcements about LGR and devolution.
Yeah.
So we'd started out, we're almost halfway through the project when suddenly we were working with local authorities that ultimately weren't going to be there in 2 or 3 years. But it did give us a chance to pivot and start to think exactly about, okay, well, what's the picture going to look like in terms of devolution ultimately, and what would be useful for the ultimately for the strategic authorities. So I think it's
and
something
because
we've
obviously
been
you've got that
thinking
link
about.
at that level as well into the LNRS. So
and
so,
then basically into the energy transition stuff,
exactly
strategic planning. Yeah, absolutely.
And then sort of moving down from the sort of national policy statements for things and also the national land use framework, that's the next level down.
Yeah, that's the bit we're kind of plugging into. We mentioned the UK Well Adapted report. We're well hooked in with that, but the land use framework's the next big one for us. Anyway, Melanie, you've been very patient. Was there a few things you wanted to ask?
It's slightly different, but I really appreciated what Rebecca said. I think, when regarding local plans and what have you, and how they ought not to be so set in stone and ought to be adaptable over time, because things are changing, that this tool could be useful. I'm not very good on digital anything, but I really want to say we've almost got a position with some of the local groups, and they're not even groups, they're local residents with strong feelings. Here in Petersfield, I'm a trustee of PCAN, who want to take matters into their own hands, and it's a kind of populist approach to this is the land next to me. I want it to support my family and the residents around me, but I don't want to become a community interest group. I do not want to pay for a license for it, so we're just going to do it.
Well, I had the opportunity probably a year or so ago to go and look at around Shropshire and some rural areas sort of up there where I mentioned the community land trusts, and effectively they were local residents and local groups that had got together and effectively they either leased or they purchased the land, and they use it for, in some cases they were using it for food production, in some cases they were using it for nature recovery. Actually, there are some routeways for local authorities or other organisations or even private individuals to transfer land into community ownership. And the CLT, I know, is a model that the government have looked at, various governments have looked at. It is being successfully applied. We've got a community land trust scheme in Ditchling within the park that's progressing. I could, if you want to follow up with me afterwards, Melanie, drop me an email. I'll put you in touch with a contact that I have who runs the rural agency that deals with LCT, so he can probably give you some more direct advice in how you might progress. If you've got a few interested individuals, you've got an area, you do need a sympathetic landowner, but to be honest, the way that things are going with local authorities at the moment, all land is seen as a bit of a millstone. They haven't got the money to manage it, so it could be quite attractive to them to transfer it to community
It could
trust.
be. I think there is a real problem though in some respects because of the services that run underneath areas of local green space, you know, the electrics and the water and all that. So it then becomes a question of who's responsible. And if the individuals who'd like to plant it up for their future don't want that responsibility, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think you'd have to look at the CLT process. I'm not, like I said, my interactions with it, they've been really interesting. And a lot of the conversations about it's an existing process that it works, but it's really adaptable. And actually in the future, it could be applied an awful lot more.
Yeah.
So I think from your context, I think it would be a really good one to follow up on.
Thanks very much. I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay.